you can't force other countries to take your currency, especially when it has been mismanaged the way that ours has, creating $100,000 worth of debt per second, 24/7, um, using these types of sanctions and threats of tariffs to bully people into taking it or countries into taking it. It's a mistake. In fact, I think it only strengthens the resolve of the countries standing behind it. Is it a bluff? I don't know. And then on the other hand, in 2016, he did an interview, Trump did, where he mentioned, look, it would be wonderful, he said, to go back to a gold standard, although he acknowledged that there would be substantial challenges. And of course, we talk about Judy Shelton. She's known for not only her advocacy of the gold standard, but also she's been very vocal recently about issuing treasury bonds with a lower coupon rate, but then yet redeemable in gold down the road to give demand to a treasury market that is certainly losing popularity and demand. And of course, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, his new nominee, has come out and publicly said that gold is his biggest holding. He is also an advocate for injecting, I think you could say, sound money into the system. So on one hand, I think there's evidence that he's thought about tying to some degree our system to gold, although we haven't heard much about it recently. There have, been rumblings of it really since 2016. On the other hand, I think it's overplaying his card. I think it's a mistake to go around threatening. This is not how you reestablish confidence. This is not how you rekindle relationships that have been bruised and battered over the last 4 years. I think it's the wrong move. And if I had to guess, more posturing than anything, Jesse. It's suspicious that it hasn't been audited. The gold stock hasn't really been audited since the 50s. Ron Paul has floated bills over the years to audit Fort Knox, and they were turned down. Transparency is what creates trust and confidence. The lack of transparency creates suspicion. When we talk about China, look, my whole career, Jesse, people would say the numbers that they are telling us in terms of their gold holdings are crap, that they were stuck at around 1,200 metric tons for years and years, and they were never updated. They are the largest producer of gold in the world, i.e. that, they just found this huge stash, but they're the largest producer in the world, and they've been producing between 300 and 500 metric tons a year for years. That's not reflective of the numbers that they tell us, 23, 24, 2,500 metric tons. Now that's not right, not even remotely. Not only that, they're the largest producer and importer in the world. They have been flying around in interviews I've done with Sean Kuhn of Dolly Varden. They've been flying around the world buying doré and concentrate in both silver and gold from miners directly, disintermediating the commercial banks, disintermediating the market. They buy the concentrate and the doré, which are crudely refined bars, before they go to the refineries to be further refined, and bringing them home to China to further refine it. They're taking delivery off of the world's exchanges left and right. And then they tell the world that they've stopped buying gold for a few months, and everyone reacts like it's the craziest thing in the world. Yet they're lying about it because the import-export numbers tell a different story. Not to mention when they purchase gold through the through the People's Liberation Army. So the PBOC, when it purchases it directly, it's supposed to report it to the IMF. But if it's purchased by the PLA or a proxy bank, a commercial bank, or a sovereign wealth fund on behalf of the PBOC, none of these things are reported. If they purchase gold that is under the 999 purity, they don't have to report that either. So they buy the doré and the concentrate from the miners and bring it home and refine it themselves. They're the largest producer, accumulator of gold in the world. Alistair MacLeod, 2 years ago, was saying he believed they had 38,000 metric tons, 5 times what we do, 18,000 by the people, 20 by the state. They've been telling their people for years to buy gold and incentivizing them to do so. So my guess is that let's just pretend that the West has all the gold they say they do. There's just giant IOU stickers on top of the bars. Um, I don't know. It's annoying to me that they would be anything less than transparent, and I think it signals to the world that again, more, it's just it lacks trust. And then you look at the Chinese, and it's the opposite. But in a world that is moving in this direction, the last thing you would ever want to do is tell people how much you have and how much you're accumulating, as it would the trade would be crowded out. Everyone would run to accumulate it. So I guess what I'm really getting at is that I truly believe China has way more than anyone in the world, far more than we do, and it would be in their best interest to keep that close to the vest. And by the same token, if you believe the guys at GATA, like I do, they would tell you that the majority of the gold that the West has claimed to have has been leased out, pledged out, sold to keep the prices down for years and years and years. And if not, then just why not appease the people who are saying, why won't you do an audit, and just open it up to be audited? It is the gold of the American public, so just audit it. And anything short of that doesn't inspire confidence, and I think that's a bad thing. They have probably more gold in the ground than most other countries do, so I mean, at least they have the ability to pull it out of the ground. It was a very strange decision, for sure. But I guess what would happen would be immediate nationalization of their mines and of their own minerals. I think that would be a foregone conclusion. And it's funny because most people would tell you to buy North American mining projects because you have a much lesser chance of having any type of move like that, where the government comes in and nationalizes, and which I think is a trend that you could see around the world, of course. But yeah, what does it do for Canada? It puts them massively behind the eight ball, but at least they have the ability to nationalize their own properties within their own borders, and would probably in the end fare better than a lot of other countries because they have access to it. Not only that, they have much of the infrastructure already in place to pull the metal out of the ground. So you then look at the Royal Canadian Mint, they're one of the main refinery hubs in the world. So they would have the ability to do it. It might just put them behind the eight ball for a little bit. I mean, to a degree, yeah, it's certainly detracting from gold's appeal. I find it interesting that all you hear is crypto, and at the same time you find that the central banks are accumulating hard assets, not so much in the way of crypto. It's also interesting to note that if you look at the main trading pair on majority of the platforms like Kraken and Coinbase, it's USDT Tether with Bitcoin. And if you look at USDT and USDC, these dollar-based stable coins, the majority of their holdings are in US treasuries. And so it's interesting. It's as if, on one hand, people are trying to reject the legacy system, the old time system, and go into crypto. And at the same time, in many respects, they're actually supporting and extending the life of the bond market. As much of the world is shedding our treasuries, it's the backing of many of these stable coins, USDC and USDT in particular, that is actually extending the life of the crypto market. Yeah, I mean, instant gratification, Jesse, evidently is not fast enough for most people. And there's this get-rich gambling mentality on things like Dogecoin. And they have made people wealthy. They have indeed. But I find it interesting that in the end, we see the central banks buying gold hand over fist. And yet the impetus here with the public is into cryptocurrency. When you look at, you mentioned Trump going to the Bitcoin show in Tennessee. He did. And what I find also interesting about that is directly after he spoke was Senator Cynthia Loomis from Wyoming, whose proposal to fund that Bitcoin account was to revalue the gold held by the Federal Reserve on behalf of the Treasury to a level sufficient enough to use some of the proceeds to buy that Bitcoin. And so, here again, yeah, I think the Trump trade is very bullish for crypto. I think that it's becoming almost a segue into a digital world, a world that is a world filled with surveillance, a world filled with lack of privacy. People are becoming more and more and more accustomed to these digital forms of wealth. And ultimately, where does that lead to? It's almost like a stepping stone, if you will. It's just becoming more mainstream. Yet at the same time, you look at what every central bank on the planet has been accumulating, and it hasn't been cryptocurrencies. And I'm sure there are some that have. It's been hard commodities like precious metals. So, you hope it doesn't end poorly. You hope it doesn't end badly. But indeed, yeah, you have a generation of people who have put their faith in these digital assets and largely have done well. But in the end, I don't know how this all plays out. For me, I don't discount Bitcoin. I think there is certainly, you can see that the powers that be are pushing us in that direction. And rather than fight it, I think, yeah, you could certainly make some money by being in these asset classes. But in the end, for me, you take some of that profit and you pull it off the table and you put it into gold, you put it into silver, because as much as the media, as much as the information, as much as the rhetoric is pointing in that direction, don't look so much upon what they say, but what they are doing. And the most well-informed and well-funded money on the planet, their choice has been gold over Bitcoin, whereas the public's choice has been Bitcoin over gold. In the end, I guess we'll see who wins this one and who's right and who's wrong. And it doesn't have to be an either or, but for me, yeah, it's certainly something that is difficult to ignore. I see it, but in the end, I feel more comfortable with physical assets in my possession. I mean, look at Bill Gates as an example, buying up all the farmland. I think it's tangibles in your possession, and I'm not throwing dirt on Bitcoin. I happen to think it's turning into something that is becoming far more viable than I ever thought it would be. I own a little bit of it. I accumulate a little bit of it. But in the end, it does not replace gold. And I think the central banks are showing you that.